Tommy Rook. How you doing today, sir?
We're doing well, thank you, Joel.
Tommy, I gotta start here. Just kind of before we get into anything too seriously, I gotta know what's something that you do that is that's sort of overly polite to make somebody not feel uncomfortable.
Smile.
All right, even if you don't want to smile.
That's always kind of disarming here, and you can. A lot of people read their facial expressions, and I try to have the excitement and the smile when I'm around people whenever possible.
That makes sense. For me, it's something a little more nuanced. I will pretend to look at things in the grocery store that I have no intention of buying if somebody's in the spot that I need to get to, just to not like hurry them along. I always hate when somebody sort of pressures me into like a shelf selection.
I say, "Excuse me."
Say, well, I mean, like I know they're busy. They're getting their thing. Also, I'll just kind of casually look at some some spices that I don't need to get until I can get over to the the baking flour, whatever. Anyways, that's just me. But on a more serious note, Tommy, so on the other side of that, what we generally see out on the road is a little bit, some people would like to call it rage potentially, but what's going on in terms of people out on the road in the transportation business? How are things getting back to some version of normal, or have they been that way for a little bit of time now?
The recovery from the COVID shutdown has changed the transportation industry and the food chain or the supply chain. Right this minute, there's a lot of product to be moved, but not that many trucks. I think we've all heard about the fuel shortage and about the pipeline being shut down, but that was not a critical part. The critical part was there's no trucks to move it from the pipeline or from the refinery's location to the filling station, because during the pandemic, if you remember a year ago, the gasoline became more prevalent because not as used as much. People weren't traveling and all that. So a lot of these tanker operations shut down and started hauling flatbeds and other kind of things to keep their units busy. And so now cranking back up, those drivers aren't doing that anymore. To drive a truck that with fuel in it, the driver has to have special driver's license, special because it's a hazmat, special training, and so there's a shortage in the transportation part. So right this minute, there's more demand for transportation than there are truck quote drivers to be able to do it. In fact, I was listening to some rates and lane pricing the other day on the radio, and I've never heard of it, but the outbound out of California is going $4.20 a mile loaded. Last year it was about 2.5, and it's almost double. And so today the truckers are getting 20-30% more than a good time because of the demand for transportation, because there's a lot of things that need to be moved back to get to normalcy, and there's not enough drivers. The other part of that is, coupled with that, is two other things, is that the driver training schools were shut down for a period of time, as well as the Department of Vehicles. So both of those things slowed down people getting into the business, because then the driver training schools couldn't graduate them, and then the DMV could not give them proper road tests and all to let them have a CDL so they could drive. And the other thing is the drug testing house has taken about 70,000 drivers off the road since it started 16 months ago, January of 2000, last January. So those things have just crippled that part. And again, the demand is up. The freight rates are highest it's been in a long, long time, higher than I remember. So it's a good time to be a trucker from a capacity standpoint, or excuse me, a demand standpoint.
Yeah, that's a lot that's going on that's sort of impacting things. I mean, in terms of one, getting more drivers back on the road, what does that process look like? And then are truckers making the switch back to the fuel tanking to be able to, again, sort of supply that, like you said, that overwhelming demand?
Well, you obviously put the grease on the squeaking wheel, and right now that's so, and it'll eventually catch up. But there is going to be a shortage for a long period of time, based on a projection, because the other thing is some people who quit. The average age of a truck driver is 52, 53 years of age, depending on what you have. And when this pandemic started, those people that age are now 2 or 3 years older. And, they used to be at home, like a lot of people are. How many of your office people don't want to go back to office anymore? So how many of the truck drivers on the road now haven't decided not to go back? They're either other careers or now with the benefits there, they say why it's worthwhile, that hard life back after being home. So it's going to be a while. It's always cyclical in that area where you then catch up. Yeah, the reason there's going to be more tank haulers is because it's going to pay more to get it done. I mean, that's why the fuel cost that you pay for your gas every day is up about 40 or 50 cents a gallon. In my area, I assume it's the same with yours from where it started about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. The pipeline was an excuse, but that did not cause the demand or the shortage in general. There might be spot locations to catch up with it, but it was already shortage because of the fuel, the transportation area. And I think it's going to be a while. The consumer goods, the big change in the marketplace. And I was driving home from actually South Carolina yesterday, coming through there. What's amazing to me is all these outlet malls are shut down because there's no need now, because you can buy these discount items that used to be at the Nike or the Coach or these outlet stores at the last year's things. You buy that online now and get it delivered to you without going to outlet mall. We passed a half a dozen of them coming home yesterday, and they're empty. So the big thing is, and then the other thing we saw was 2 or 3 new large warehouse facilities on both. I went up 95 and back home on 75. Those things are now being built to get a product closer to the consumer so you can meet this. I want it today. I mean, everybody wants it today or tomorrow. And so it's shifting from I'm not going out to get it. I want it sent to me in a day and a half. So I think the big shift is supplying these warehouses and then getting the last mile delivery or the local delivery the next day. And I think that's changed the dynamics. And I think we're just in the start of that transition.
Well, that's interesting, right? Because it's not like it's taking any trucks off the road per se. It's just, I guess, relocating them, or in terms of where they're going. What impact does that have, though? I mean, in terms of instead of getting the merchandise to a retail shop to as opposed to like a warehouse, what does that look like on the transportation, and how do business owners need to prepare for that? And then I guess ultimately, how do they cover that in their business?
Well, what the more efficient places. And this is where the drop and hook operations, which I'm sure you're familiar with in trucking, if that becomes maximized, so the trucker comes in, drops a full trailer at the distribution area, and picks up an empty trailer to go for, and he or she does not have to spend any time there. It's going to maximize their time on the highway versus waiting to 2 or 3 hours to have it loaded and unloaded. And so the people, this is once you get the efficiency of these warehouses closed. This will make the large asset, the $150,000 truck, more useful, generating revenue coming out of there, and the driver get more use of their time, so that they don't bump into that 14 hours all I can drive a day time, and so they can get some more miles in, and then have the local deliveries, which can be with smaller trucks, less expensive drivers. Younger drivers, when you get them home, you don't have to worry about the interstate problem to the local individual houses or at the local store. So I see that that's where we're going, in my opinion, in the next year or so, as we adjust to this new economy that we're used to. I want to it now. I ordered it online and I expect it tomorrow afternoon.
What do you think that looks like in terms of the business owner, that trucking, the person owning the trucking agency? How do they have to adjust their business to sort of, take advantage of that? And then,
Are you talking about the agency or the trucking company?
Yeah, company, I guess, would probably maybe be the better word. I use agents more of an insurance habit than anything. But how are they going to have to adjust to?
They're making more per mile than they have in a long time. Their cost is slightly up because of the fuel costs and driver costs, but not to as much as they're getting the additional revenue. The question that they're going to have to ask, and that we have as an insurance provider have to worry about, is, are you going to substitute quality or quantity versus quality? Where is the driver? Are they going to reduce their screening of that driver just to get it moved from point A to point B? And what will that do on the safety records and crashes later? We haven't seen that yet. The good trucking companies advertise they're safe. They advertise safe drivers. They do their background checks and all that. But will they pass up a load to make sure their drivers stay in that criteria or that quality, or will they reduce it and say make a few exceptions, and then this is going to end up being a ripple effect and end up with more crashes. So we don't know what's going to happen in that area. It's going to depend on on the commodities and the discipline of the motor carrier that we're dealing with.
And from an insurance standpoint, how do you think we sort of prepare for that, or is there any way to get ahead of it?
The first thing you have to do is not get ahead of it. You got to recognize it. Meaning, it's a changing world. I did a webinar today that we're going to publish in a couple of weeks. Just the cameras in the trucks and the necessity for having at least 4 cameras in the truck. The idea that now you have electronic log devices and all the data on electronic log devices that helps us to track what the trucker is, where the truck is going, how the driver is operating. The new cameras in the truck, the driver-facing cameras can now even say if you're texting or you're going to sleep, and it'll warn you, pay attention to the wheel because they're watching your eyes and things like that. We haven't seen this yet, the outcome of this and how it's going to affect insurance. It's got to. Intuitively know it will, because this is the big brother watching everything and feedback. There's these new platforms, these new programs out that will grade the driver based on speed, based on location, based on their attention and all that. And they will even give some immediate training to that driver when they next stop to tell them, here, last 10 hours you drove, or 11 hours, or depending on if it stopped for fuel or food, here's where you did something wrong. You need to watch that next time, where it's speeding or whatever. So we haven't seen all this yet. Will that allow for less experienced drivers? Because now we can not only train them before they get behind the wheel with somebody, a trainer in it, but we can now also, quote, train them or watch them as they now start their career and have somebody monitoring their activities. It's not, I like the idea of monitoring. It's not discipline. It's not that, because they got to get used to it. It's helping them get rid of habits that might lead to crashes. The question we're going to have is, how's that going to be involved in the insurance industry? Where are we going to start recognizing that equipment as an insurance provider, or when we're going to start requiring it as a part of underwriting, or make some underwriting decisions that do we actually subsidize some of those? Because one advantage of subsidizing it, then we can get access to those records. And so we can then determine how to write their insurance. Do we write their mileage based on the ELD mileage and where they're going? We subsidize their LD. We demand those records. We'll know the vehicles. We know each vehicle, how many miles it goes. We know where it's gone and where it's not gone. And so that's better than the information we had before. We've got so much data out there now. It's just overwhelming. And so many apps and companies here trying to give us more data, meaning the motor carrier also from an insurance standpoint for us, because we can use that to choose who we want to insure or not. To me, it's a great time learning all this and then figuring out where it's going to be in the end result. There is already more public information about a motor carrier than any other business you could ever write. Any other business that anybody can. And that starts with the stuff from the federal website, Safer, and what they tell the government about who they are, what they haul, how many units they got, how many drivers they got, all about their address. Then we monitor their roadside activities, at least the inspections they have, where they have. We got the IFTA reports that tell them the states they drive in, the percentage of the states there. Now, on top of that, we have all on-road activities. So now with the ELD information, taking the electronic control module information, the hard stops, how fast they're going, where they're going, the actual hours they're driving, actually places and states they're driving. Are they going to Miami? It's coming forward. Going to Miami or Jacksonville. That's a difference in $10,000 a year premium power unit, depending on where they stop in Florida. And so we're now going to decide how to best use that information. That's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years. So it's a good time to be a trucker. They're making money. But how are they spending that money? Just putting it in the bank, or they're buying this technology to be safe, to be the trucker of the future? And we in the insurance industry, because the insurance industry, even state rate filing requirements require us to look backwards on things. Well, we don't have statistics to show how, if any of this stuff affects our losses. or even frequency. And so we're going to have to start capturing what's the equipment on the truck, how did it affect frequency with or without, with one's with and one without, and then how does it play out in court time. But it's even getting to the point where I saw a court case the other day filed where the plaintiff's attorneys were alleging that this truck that killed or damaged their claimant for not having this crash mitigation equipment on their truck, and even named the manufacturer in it for not having it on the truck. But what they were asking to have on the truck wasn't even available when the truck was bought new. But the plaintiff's attorneys are attacking that, saying, if you spent $350, you wouldn't have hit our people. You mean you're not going to be able to spend $350 when unwilling that could have avoided this crash, and therefore asking penalties like that, or the manufacturer not do it. Now, that was an outlier in that case, in that particular allegation, and the complaint can clearly be defeated because there's a lot of law that says you can't expect a manufacturer to have equipment that wasn't available on a truck or on any kind of equipment. There's been many case laws that you can't compare 3 years or 4 years or 5 years old stuff with what you have available today, from everything from dishwashers, cleaning fluids, anything like that. But that's where it's going to go. And what are we going to do about it? The other thing that was important, and if your agents are hearing me, Florida just ruled that they had a dismissal of a case based on the evidence of a camera, a front-looking dash camera. And today, anybody who does not have a dash cam in their truck, I'm not talking about a GoPro, I'm talking about a legitimate dash cam that captures what's happening for when a crash happens, is way behind time. In fact, if I was an insurance provider, I would not insure a truck that did not have a dash cam in it.
That's a lot. So, I mean, what struck me is how, again, obviously the trucking industry is again, like you said, has the most data available to it of almost anybody that they could be looking to kind of, do business with. And they're sort of pushing the technology limits in terms of what can happen. What does that look like in terms of claims, right? What kind of claims are happening today that we're seeing that maybe can, I don't want to say be prevented in the future, but we can sort of more adequately prepare for it? And how is that going to impact underwriting moving forward?
Well, we already touched some of that. Unfortunately, even with the pandemic, with fewer people on the road, last year there were more crashes than before. And so we've got to factor those in. And some of them were severe because you could go faster. So the severity went up in a lot of cases. I'm not talking about nuclear verdicts. I'm just talking about average severity. So we got to adjust back on crashes. I don't know what the less experienced drivers are going to increase those or not. But I totally agree with you that the technology is there. And so the insurance carriers are just going to have to start. I've been saying this for a number of years. Ask the insured, or at least reporting insurance from an underwriting standpoint, what equipment they have that have the claims people report back that kind of equipment to develop data to see what will help us to determine those things, and how we can use that to defend us in court. So it's the crash avoidance equipment, the anti-rollover stabilization for tankers, flatbeds, the lane deviations. I mean, 80% of the stuff you got in your car, if not 90% now, it's just not in the trucks yet. And so when it gets in the trucks, it's going to do the same thing that you're going to do when it's warned you when you get too close, or actually stops you if you get too close. It might not stop the crash, but you'll be hitting them at a far less speed. So it won't be as damaging as before. But that stuff's got to get in these big trucks. And the sooner the better to start doing that. And yeah, there'll be some, not only less frequency of claims, but they won't be quite severe if the truck starts slowing down itself. And I'm a firm believer, and I've seen the statistics that this automated equipment can stop quicker than a human can. It can react quicker than a human. And I think if you have your car, I don't know what you have on your car, but my car stops me every time I get too close to my garage to that ice cooler right in front of my door here, because I can't see it and I'm inches away, but it stops me right there. And so I think all that's eventually going to be on 18-wheelers. Now, the other question is, when it's going to get to our insureds that most RPS agents write, or right through RPS, and that's the smaller motor carrier with 2 to 4 trucks. They typically buy a used truck. They don't buy them right after the factory. They buy ones that have been used by the larger trucking companies for 4 or 5 years, who might have all that equipment. So before it really penetrates all the way down to the typical truck, because 88% of motor carriers have less than 5 power units. To get down to that is going to take 5-6 years to get that equipment down to that level. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight. We just need to start quantifying how it does affect it and start deciding, does it reduce frequency and severity? I do think, and I had a discussion with 2 lawyers in the last couple of days, Rob Mosley and Jay Taylor, about this, and clearly the court systems have adjusted a lot, and the trucker at the current time has more sympathy from juries and all than they had before. Even though they're still afraid of trucks, they now appreciate that they're bringing something to them, from toilet paper to the vaccines. In fact, if you saw when the vaccines rolled out, all those pictures of trucks leaving with that's all positive. So now the lawyers are learning defense lawyers are learning how to attack this more like the plaintiffs are. This reptilian theory is all emotion, telling them that they need to punish the motor carrier because they've been unsafe. Don't worry about what they did that day. So instead of now countering that with statistics only, they're countering that with more emotion. This is a family man. That was unabortable, all that kind of stuff. And as well as the court system that broke down has backed up so that now your mediations are virtual, but also you might not get in court now for 2 or 3 years. So in mediation, do you want your money today or do you want your money 3 years from now? And so this is helping a lot in getting the claims settled quicker. I didn't say at lower dollars because there is a point in time to walk away from a number, but it does give us greater opportunity to maximize the efficiency of mediation, to get rid of the case as quick as possible, and cut off that long tail or the risk of going in front of a jury, which is 6 or 12 people that walk out of Walmart and say, come with me and make a decision about how much damage this big truck did to somebody.
All right, Tommy, I got 3 more questions for you, sir. And the first one is, what is one thing you hope you never forget?
Relationships with people is the most important thing in life, and that you accept people for who they are and where they are, and be not judgmental.
Now, on the other side of that, Tommy, what's one thing you still have yet to learn?
Well, at my age, I have been around for a long time. I don't know about that. I mean, I could tell you the obvious. I still can't spell. I can't write, luckily, but those things are beyond my ability to learn anymore. And thank you for, even spell check doesn't work when you don't get close enough. That's one of those words. I guess it would be to be content of where we are. I've always have been. I never look backwards. I always look forward. So I'm happy at the place I am. I've had blips in my life. I mean, 24 years ago, I had colon cancer. And I have survived those things. So I learned how to survive those things by not looking back. In fact, somebody might be listening here that knows who's Edwin Rollins are. Do you know who Edwin Rollins is? He owned RPS. You know Jimmy Profit?
Yep, I know Jimmy Profit. Yep.
This is his uncle.
Oh, okay.
Who he got the agency from. But I taught him in the agency in North Carolina 3 weeks after I had my colon cancer. So I just didn't let it stop me. I went forward even after that while I was taking chemo. And just tie it back to your agencies or to the agencies you have here. But he was I did a class in the agency. He came up and got his CE from me 3 weeks after I had colon cancer, 2 weeks after I got out of the hospital.
That's a pretty intense story there, Tommy. Last question for you, sir. If I were to basically hand you a magic wand of sorts to reshape, change, speed up, alter any part of insurance that you saw fit, what is that thing? Where is it going and what's it doing?
Knowledge. For everybody to know what they're doing and be serious about what they're doing. I find so many young producers are out there just selling and they don't understand the product. I'm looking at cases, they don't understand coverage. We teach coverage. I get questions all the time about, what's covered and what's not. And we have so much emphasis on just bringing them through the door and this selling a commodity. We don't have a commodity. We have a contract to provide some service. The example I use is like buying your car. How many people buy their car by how much it weighs? We buy insurance policies that way. You buy a car for all the features. And what you hear is you sell the features. We don't sell features in insurance. And we don't do, in my opinion, well enough analyzing the coverages that are needed, and more important, take time to explain to the insurer, because all we're worried about is volume. And that's my concern.
All right, Tommy, this has been fantastic, sir. I'm going to leave it right there.
All right, my friend. You be safe. Stay well.